Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marxist Clover, podcast where we take a critical look at anime. This is your host, Eric Hobbs-Bond, and here's my co-host, The Angles Next Door.
Greetings.
And today, we're actually going to do something a little different, because we're not actually going to be talking about an anime, we're going to be talking about an arc in a manga, a few manga chapters.
Yes.
Which is namely Spy Family, chapters 69 to 78. Though, really, we're talking till about chapter 75, because that's where the meat of the arc really happens.
Yeah, 73 through 75. 73, 74, probably the biggest ones of this particular discussion. So if you want to read along, I would highly recommend it. It's some great chapter. The Viz Shonen Jump deal is one of the best deals out there for reading manga. I know this isn't supposed to be an advertisement, but the easy way of reading a lot of that shonen stuff. Very cheap, legally.
Is it still connected?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you had to use the Shonen Jump app, right?
No, you can read on your computer.
Okay.
I don't think it's as good of an app on your computer because it's like how Funimation and Crunchyroll are at times where they just log, or I guess the old Funimation website, where they just log you out all the time.
I see.
Also, if that's where you watch, that's where you can read like actual like mature rated manga. So if you try to read it on the app, they close off a lot of the mature stuff.
Oh, okay. I think a lot of the Korean webcomic websites do that.
Yeah, I think so. I think they do that as well.
Yeah, we recommend the Viz Shonen Jump app. It's a great deal, but again, we're not going to condemn or condone any way of watching it or reading, consuming manga. So do what you want to do. But I'd highly recommend reading along. If you have watched the anime of Spy Family, you'll have no problem following along. And I don't think there's anything that you'd consider a spoiler that you'd not want to see in these chapters.
Except for 75, there's a character that if you've not read 75 yet, that you have not been introduced in the anime yet.
That is true. So really go read the whole thing. But yeah, if you can't, just read those few chapters. And even if you haven't watched Spy Family, I think you could figure out most of what's going on. It's a pretty self-contained arc.
Yeah.
And also, watch Spy Family. I mean, come on, guys.
It's very good. It's very good.
So we're recording this a week and a half into November. And so something's happened very recently that has made this chapter a lot more relevant. Or these chapters a lot more relevant. Which is the election. And this
podcast is called Marxist Clover. I think we've said in the first episode we are not pure. That's a parody name because there's a character named Marx. This isn't a pure Marxist podcast. We are not the most knowledgeable people on all subjects of political philosophy. We are more like history people. We are leftists, though. That is something that if we've not made it really obvious thus far, we are. Initially, when we talked about making the podcast, we knew we were going to do these ones because we remember when we read through these like a year or so ago, that we were just like, whoa, this is really good. But because of the election, this, I think, has a lot more stakes. There's a lot to say about protests. And Spy Family is about living in a bad system and trying to prevent it from being a worse system than it already is. And yes, a lot of it is through like cloak and dagger stuff that's highly legal to not become a spy or an assassin or get experimented on or experiment on children and make them so they can read minds.
We take no legal responsibility for any mass assassinations listeners do.
Yeah, don't do that. But there always is a worry, especially in times like these, that the anger that rightfully everybody has right now, because we know who we're talking to. We know who we're not talking to. I mean, if you want to hear what we have to say and understand why and over the podcast, because this definitely a lot of these issues are going to happen. I mean, we did have in the Vampire Dormitory episode that was a hopefully we got it. We are a very pro-trans community here that we are trying to build around the anime community. We want to be a very accepting community as anime and the things we like should just be very accepting of community, because all people are people and deserve empathy. I mean, so much about shonen stuff, I mean, is about overcoming oppression or overcoming something. I mean, Naruto is about basically growing up in a system, being looked down upon, and then raising and kind of... Okay, I mean, there's a little bit of a capitalist angle where it's like Naruto picks himself by his own bootstraps. I mean, he's also a Nepo baby, but that's besides the point. But, like, everything is about overcoming something. And I think that's why we are empowered by it.
Yeah, and I think the story gives a lot of hope that...
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough being on the left. And you take a lot of L's, and we are taking a lot of them right now, and a lot of people are feeling pretty hopeless. And I hope this story can give you some hope and some... It will help through this hard time.
Spy Family, we'll talk about that in a second. Spy Family is literally the main goal of the main character, which is Lloyd, is I want to make a world where kids don't need to cry. That is at the heart of Spy Family. I want to make a world where kids don't need to cry. And it's very funny when Anya says it in this chapter, and they remark that she's a child, but we'll get to that. That's just like peak humor. Spy Family is very funny.
So yeah, we hope this episode will give you hope and have some fun along the way.
So let's talk about why we talk about this initially. So the reason we want to talk about this initially is that we just really like this series. It's very lovely. The characters are fun. Anya, Frankie, Lloyd, Yor.
Even Yuri's okay.
Yuri's all right. Yuri is all right. He's a siscon, but he's a good egg. He has some good moments in this particular one where he is worried about Yor being sad because Anya could die. And that's growth for him.
But he also probably actually does care about Anya. He just doesn't want to admit it.
That's true.
Yeah, for a Secret Service interrogator, he's as good as you can get.
Also, just peak humor. It's a spy dad. It's a assassin mom. It's a person that reads mind.
In the daughter.
The daughter. Then there's a dog that can see the future as Bond. Also, I guess you probably should have figured out we are Spy Family fans, because literally the logo for the show is literally Bond.
Yes, it's Eric Hobbs Bond because of Bond, the dog that can see the future. And none of the characters know each other's alternate IDs except for Anya, who is telepathic and so knows everything that's going on. And I guess probably Bond probably knows, because he and Anya are always sharing their brains.
And since Yuri is a Secret Service agent, Lloyd knows that Yuri is a Secret Service agent. Right. So that's like one of the only ones where their identity is kind of known. What we like about this show is it's very funny, humor's good, action's good. The movie we watched was very good.
Yeah.
This is very much like the next gen Detective Conan, which for the most part we're fans of.
Yeah, I really want this to be like Detective Conan, where for the last 20 years, every April, Detective Conan releases a film that's not canon, but it's just another chance to experience the story with the characters. And I so want this to be a thing with Spy Family, that they just have a wholesome, feel-good movie every year. They can do it.
I like that this also is propaganda that the Junior Detective League is actually some of the peakest part of Detective Conan, because I think the Junior Detective League aspect of Spy Family is also really good, which is the stuff where it deals when they're at the academy. Like I like Damien's great. What's her name? Becky's great.
Yeah, so Anya goes to this elite academy, and the main plot revolves around Lloyd had to create this fake family to infiltrate the school.
Yeah.
So he can get close to his intelligence target.
Which is Donovan Desmond. leader of the National Unity Party of Estonia, and like he used to be like one of the head honchos in before the war or during the war, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of implied he was the fascist leader of the country during the war, and we live now in a world that's in the aftermath of the war. Both
Right.
Lloyd and Yor were orphaned by the war, and so all the characters of a certain age have memories of the war.
And we know that this world, they're in East Germany.
Yes, the setting is based on the divided Germany post World War II, so it's set in East Germany, in East Berlin.
Yeah.
So that's the setting, and Lloyd is a spy for the West. Yor is an assassin for the East. And in order for Lloyd to complete his mission, he needs Anya to become an honor student. And it turns out the way to create an honor student is to provide a loving family environment and nurture her interests and talents. It seems like it turns out the mission kind of makes them a real family.
The hope. I mean, there is the tragedy of the show that I have always thinking about, that at any moment this show could just go from being a happy, funny show to being one of the most depressing stories of all time. Very much like The Americans, which is another really good show. If you're into Spy Family. We like calling it Spy X Family, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, I want to talk about the name, because it is Spy Family, and I know you're not supposed to pronounce the X, but I also think some of the arguments when people push back on people pronouncing the X are kind of irrelevant. Like, yes, it's pronounced Spy Family in Japanese, but it works because it's a foreign language, so you're not reading it as Spy Family automatically in your brain. Like, yeah, so I'm fine with calling it Spy X Family to differentiate it from just the phrase Spy Family.
And as a person that grew up reading a lot of fan fiction, I like it because X usually means that people are being shipped. And since Lloyd is ostensibly the main character of this story, I like that it's Spy X a family. So it's a spy with a family. Spy Family makes it sound like everybody in the family is a spy. That's like my biggest criticism of calling it Spy Family.
Yeah, exactly. It actually feels more accurate this way. And so, yeah, I'm probably going to try to say Spy Family, but we're also going to switch all the time, so.
Yeah, because amongst ourselves, we do that. And you're like, do you do the same with like Hunter x Hunter? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, Hunter x Hunter I've come to be more okay with, but like, I don't want to call like Romeo X, like Romeo Juliet. That sounds silly. I like calling it Romeo X Juliet.
Yeah.
And I don't know what weird way you say XX or X-holic, like the Clamp show. Like, I have no idea how to say that correctly if you don't pronounce all those X's. So, and you don't, and Homspot doesn't even really know what I'm talking about, which is fine. Because that's in the Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, like, and all that kind of mess of the Clamp Ultra crossover universe. I'll do setup. So the setup for this is that Eden Academy is going on a field trip to a museum when their bus is hijacked by members of the terrorist group known as the Red Circus. They've shown up before, I think, in this. I don't remember when, but this is what we're caring about, is this particular one. A lot of what this section revolves around is just the Eden kids on a bus interacting with terrorists. So it's very much, as I brought up earlier, the Junior Detective League. So in Detective Conan, what we usually mean by that is when Conan's hanging out with the kids. So this is very much an Anya-focused one. There's actually very little of Yor or Lloyd. They only really show up towards the very end. So it's really one focusing on a lot of the Eden Academy kids. But I think a character that kind of steals this arc in a way is Billy Squire. Mm-hmm. Is he like a reference to anything? Okay, he is. Okay, I was right. He is a reference to the rock musician Billy Squire.
Okay,
good. So Billy Squire, I think, is a really fun character in this. He's really intriguing, and we're going to talk about why he's intriguing. But yes, on the bus, they're hijacked, and it kind of shows through like a very simple hijacking story and then like a hostage situation and dealing with the hostage situation, while Anya and the gang are trying to deal with it with some great humor. Anya's just being her very fun self during this, of cheating her way through this by reading people's minds. Why the Squire is compelling is he is angry. His daughter died. His daughter was a protester back when the Red Circus was just a student-led protest group that was trying to speak out against a state, like basically having no state criticism whatsoever, where you couldn't speak out against it, and they wanted to have more freedom, basically.
Yes.
Biddy, this is Billy Squire speaking to his daughter in a flashback in chapter 73. Biddy, you're not going to another one of those student demonstrations, are you? I don't want you associating with shady characters like that. It's dangerous. And then Biddy says, you don't know what you're talking about, Daddy. There's nothing shady about the Red Circus. Last time, and then this is Billy again says, last time I heard people got arrested. And then Biddy says, but we don't do anything wrong. Billy again saying, that's besides the point. The government's clapping down hard on protests, and if you're not careful, you get it worse. And then Biddy responds, well, I'm not scared. And then Billy says, I'm worried about you. And then the Biddy says, probably the most important thing, because Ani will repeat it later. Biddy says, I am not afraid to die for what I know is right. But living in a world where we're not allowed to criticize what's wrong, now that scares me. So many people are suffering now because of the government's negligence. And Billy says, you're still a kid, Biddy. You don't understand anything. The real world's not that simple. And Biddy's response to this is, if that's all you have to say about it, then you're the enemy too. And later on, Billy says, I'm trying to keep our family safe. What's so wrong with that? So from reading that, what do you take away from that? I definitely I'm not afraid to die for anything. I'm not afraid to die for anything I know is right, but living in a world where we're not allowed to criticize what's wrong, now that scares me.
Yeah.
And I think that rings true for a lot of criticism, and I think a lot of fear, going back to the election, is fear of the anger that is in this new administration, and the fact that protests have been clamped down on quite a bit, especially student-led protests, much like this one.
Mm-hmm.
If we think back earlier with the Gaza protests earlier this year, a lot of those were shot down quite a bit, and none of the and was divide and kind of conquer, saying these kids are anti-Semitic or they're violent. And really, I think the large interpretation in popular media was to say that these people are wrong. And this is where the media, even in the United States, is anti the protests of saying stuff when it comes to violence that they don't agree with. And one of my fears under this next administration is anything going to start being censored? I mean, Musk is now going to be part of the administration. He controls a platform that, if it has not been apparent yet, we are not using that platform, largely because I just never used Twitter that way before.
It's not very fun.
It's not very fun, and I don't want to interact with people. It's just a 4chan type of place,
and it has become less fun.
Yeah, but that is something I worry about. Is that I just hope that people aren't going to be clamped down because of free speech violations in dissent. I mean, this country is a country that is founded upon liberalism and dissent. I mean, you can take, and this isn't me glazing the United States of America, if you do want to take it from a very literal point of view, that yes, a lot of what was done to make the United States an independent country was on the idea of dissent. Barring a lot of the people that were leading that dissent that may have some dubious views, dissent like the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, all these people that were advocating, again, basically of gaining independence, Declaration of Independence.
And even within the movement, there were more radical dissent.
There was more radical dissent. As an educator and for a person that basically I view everything through two lenses, history and education. That is how I view mostly everything. Because at other times I'm a teacher. And I think one of the most important things to take about is dissent. Even of people voting against Biden for his policies and not liking the fact that they feel he hasn't done enough inflation and then protesting against him. That is perfectly right within the democratic system that we have. And that is built upon the idea of freedom of speech. I mean, there's a little bit more you could go to in the freedom of speech, and there's like limits to it, of course. We were literally talking earlier about protests being barred. And I think it's very important at times, especially since, as I said, this is podcast that we are talking about Spy Family, but we are also talking about this idea of dissent. Really, there's a little bit more we're going to talk about in a little bit because we're going to read another section. But Biddy's idea of I'm not afraid to die for what I know is right, I think is a very staunch, what we believe in the progressive leftist ideals of kind of freedom and stuff, of basically free. You have the right to be free and be able to express yourself. And if there is something that you feel is wrong, people have a right to state what their opinion is.
Mm-hmm.
Especially living under a system, because if this is East Germany, I'm pretty sure had a lot of corruption. I think they're like one of the most hardcore surveillance states.
I mean, the Stasi.
Of its era.
The Stasi were one of the most infamous secret police organizations of all time.
Yeah, and that's like even up there with like the FBI, the KGB, and this is just the East German one.
Even the Gestapo. It's right up there.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, because I'm not as familiar with my East German history.
And this is not like with East Germany necessarily. There are differences.
Yeah,
it is understood like the fascist form of government is the big bad evil more than the communist authoritarian state that they're currently in.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things that's always going on is this agenda in a way that at any moment in time, it's going to go back to that. Like it feels like a lot of the things that Lloyd is doing, and this is maybe my interpretation, is trying to prevent that the West is trying to prevent the Desmond government from actually coming back into power.
Yes. Like the worst case is the fascists coming back to power. The authoritarian state is shown to be really bad in how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But
and also, as from an interventionist point of view, because yes, we are talking about Western imperialist power trying to create a Western world order. Yes, is there issues that come into that? Yes, but in this instance, from what we've read, we know what it's similar to. It's probably similar to the Nazis. That is like one of the weird things about the series. That it's strange to think like, what if Hitler was alive, but he was in East Germany?
Yeah,
and I think it's really, really, really important that we're viewing it from that lens. That this is still like, once again like a children's story or a preteen, like a young adult story. So like the politics, like we're overanalyzing it, but I do think it can be based in that simplistic thing: is that the government that Donovan stands for is wrong, and trying to prevent him from gaining power, because the whole thing is that he wants to probably start another war.
Yes. And in this show, neither the East or the West are shown to be intrinsically bad.
Oh, no, not at all.
The main tension of the show is people who are pro-war and anti-war. And this show is a staunchly anti-war show. And that really is the main conflict of the show, is people from both sides who want war versus our main characters who know the devastation of war and don't want to see it again.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is summarized in the excellent conversation that Anya has with Billy, where Anya eventually, who has a bomb put on her, because she spoke out. Anya always speaks out, but she also knows the bomb isn't a bomb. The conversation that Anya and Billy are about to have, where Anya basically de-escalates him into stepping down, because I think what's good about the de-escalation, it talks about that everyone's a victim under this order, and that's something that when you're angry at the order that is suppressing and that killed Bill, like because Billy's daughter was killed, that for protesting, that your anger can distract you, and you just become angry about the system. You just want to destroy the system without wanting, where you kind of lose the sauce a little bit. At least that's what the story is saying, and you kind of forget that if you start using like some aspects of violence and what they're doing here on the bus, that it's not really about the protests anymore. It's not about the message.
It reminds me of Albert Camus' comments on the war in Algeria. I think he was asked about the bombings that the resistance were doing, and I think he commented how his mom could have been killed. And I think he was criticized at the time because, I mean, the war in Algeria is one of the dark chapters of European imperialism, which is a lot of dark chapters. And
I went to the Billy Joel concert when I was at the Billy Joel concert last night. I'm like, oh, where is the line about Belgians in the Congo? I'm like, oh, that's from We Didn't Start the Fire. Like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and also, don't tell the French that it was a colony, because, as you say, Algerie, c'est France. It's part of France. It's not a colony. But definitely the people there were treated like a colony. And so the colonial state imparted a lot of violence onto the population. And the result was a war that was very violent. And so on the left, it was pretty understandable that this was a worthy anti-colonial movement.
Interruption really quick. This, because like your knowledge of this is better. So this takes place in the 50s, right?
Yeah, 40s, 50s.
Yeah. Like I think I read that Mandela may have traded some strategies.
Oh, yeah.
For his protest against the South African government.
Yeah.
The Afrikaner government. Yeah.
It was a very bloody conflict, and there weren't maybe that many places to de-escalate. I think if you want a good feel for the harsh realities of the war in Algeria, you should watch this old black and white film, The Battle of Algiers, that really captures it. And it's a classic film that I think was shown to me 3 times in college in 3 different classes.
Impressive. I just got to watch the Gods Must Be Crazy. Equally as fascinating film, but that's interesting.
But to Camus' comments, as one of my professors was pointing out, his comments weren't meant to be a criticism of the resistance movement. His comments were trying to illustrate that there is a cycle of violence, that violence begets violence. And if you lose track of that, this is the problem with violence. Like, it has its place. Like, you brought up Mandela, like, the end of apartheid wouldn't have happened without the armed military part of the anti-apartheid movement. So yeah, you can't give, like, all these anti-colonial movements happened because a lot of violence that forced this change, that forced people's liberation. And that's important. But I think what Camus was trying to say there is you have to be aware of the cycle of violence and the long-term impacts it has. And I think this show is trying to demonstrate that, like, yes, Billy Squire was a victim of horrific state violence. But, like, by taking children hostage and potentially killing them, is it the best for the movement and for the future, or is it just for anger?
Are you ready for some of the hot takes from this? Because we're going to read some of the conversation from the dialogue of the manga, as I think a lot of it's really good. So when we get to towards the very end of this section, we have Anya starts kind of summoning Biddy and says, and in her very childlike, and this is what's great about Anya, is that sometimes like children are very blunt about the realities of what is going on. So in the plot, Anya and Damien both have bombs around their necks, and they have been stopped. Mr. Henderson is here now. Mr. Henderson of the school, excellent character. Fabulous, because he's very into saying fabulous, if I'm correct.
No, elegant.
Very elegant, very elegant.
Mr. Henderson is a teacher who's obsessed with elegance and is a very good educator.
Yeah, he is pretty good. And basically it's getting to a point where they're going to be surrounded by the Secret Service team, but one of the other members of Red Circus has a bomb that I don't think Billy Squire knows about, and is going to use it to blow up the bus. Anya, because she's able to read minds, figures this out, so she decides to confront Billy again. And we're now going to do, once we did earlier, I'm going to quote some of the stuff that Anya and Billy are going to talk about. It's a little bit of a longer conversation, so bear with us. There's some times when she's interrupted by thought bubbles. They're very funny, so I'll try not to laugh. I'm not afraid of this bomb, the bomb that the guy has. And then she thinks to herself, because I know it's fake, but dying without speaking up. Thought bubble again. Due to getting blown up. Now that scares me. And Billy Squire then realizes, he thinks about when Biddy said something very similar to that. And then there's some funny things with like Henderson. Mr. Henderson says, "You'll be fine. It won't hurt you to miss one meal because they recently got meals brought in for them." And Anya is kind of obsessed with being hungry, and she's made a lot of comments about being hungry. And it says, "Do you really believe everyone is that hungry?" And then Anya's like, "We won't be fine. If we don't act, none of us will be fine." And then Billy basically thinks back to his Biddy saying, "Don't you see how many people are suffering right now? At this moment, they won't make it." Oh wait, no, this is actually Anya. I take it back. This is Anya saying, "Don't you see how many people are suffering right now? At this rate, we won't all make it through the winter. I won't stop, even if it costs me my life." And then there is another period where, so now we're going to go back to summarizing some of the stuff that's going on here. So this really like shakes Billy quite a bit, and he talks about losing his resolve, and he kind of wants to kick Anya off the bus, and even removes like the bomb from her.
Yes, and then Anya realizes that her presence compromises the resolve of the hostage takers, so she refuses to leave the bus and go to safety. Which is the true heroic act of this.
Yeah, it is. And then Billy's like, "You're refusing freedom?" And then Mr. Anderson's like, "Forger, what are you doing? Have you gone mad?" then this is where like the humor and like the drama just gets really good, where it's like, "You're the elite of the bourgeoisie. You got yours, so what do you care about anyone else? Get the hell off this bus." And then he's like thinking, what is with these kids? And he thinks about like all the other things that have happened. And then it goes back to Anya saying, no, I want to eat more rachons. Anya, the English translators who think of the very funny things that Anya, who is probably 4 years old, hanging out with 6-year-olds, says is absolutely excellent. Damien then thinks, those were nasty. Why does she want more? If she gets off, she could have as many as she wants. And then it leads to this really funny realization, kind of what we were leading to, of Billy being like, am I mistaken? Do these children not get enough to eat at their homes? Or he thinks more, it's like, it's as if she was more afraid of starvation than being blown up. I thought Eden Academy was exclusively for the elite upper class. If she's trying to tell me that they're all struggling, even the Desmond family, could Donovan Desmond really have fallen so far after losing power? Has Estonia's economy completely collapsed while I've been hiding outside the country?
Ostania.
Are these children? Ostania. Okay, thank you.
We're not talking about Estonians. We're not sitting in the sauna.
Maybe you should keep that in. Are even these children suffering from a food shortage? And this girl is willing to have her head blown off for the sake of her classmates? And then Billy's like, why tell me why you're so concerned about everyone's food? Are there other shootings forcing you to do this? And then this is where it's great, because I think we may have brought this up earlier. Anya says, I want to make a world where kids don't need to cry. And we'll come back to that. But the reaction to this, like I said, the humor is great. And Billy's like, that's so noble. But then I think Mr. Henderson and Damien and his friends are like, but you're a kid yourself. Billy's like, do you mean by labeling you as the elite, I'm the one who's been furthering inequality? And then one of his people interrupts. And it's like, one of the other people on the Red Circus is like, what the hell is wrong with you, Billy? Have you forgotten about your own daughter? You want equality? Then make these bastards know the pain of losing a child. And this part is so beautiful. I love this part so much. Billy thinks about a different flashback. This is not when he's arguing, and rereading this just made me very emotional. And Billy's like, I could never forget my daughter. Or have I? He's right. I have forgotten. And then now we get into a flashback where it's Biddy and Billy again. And Billy's like, Biddy, you're bleeding. What happened? And Biddy's like, I was feeding the neighborhood cats. But it was awful. The bigger cats kept trying to steal all of the smaller cats' food. Is that the bourgeoisie cats? That's not in the story. That's something. And then there it shows Biddy being like, "Stop that! You already had your share. When I tried to stop them, I got all scratched up." And then Billy is like, "You know how it is with animals, survival of the fittest." And then Biddy's like, "Yeah, I know. I'm meddling in their world. I know that, but I just can't bear to hear anyone cry." And then you can see Billy's like really happy. He's like, "Wait," and then Billy's like, "Hey, wait a minute. Did you take the food from our pantry?" And then Billy's like, "Hee hee hee hee." And then Billy's like, "Don't you hee 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 me. You know we barely have enough for ourselves." And then Billy again is like, Biddy, not again." And then Biddy says, "What I can say, Daddy, is that you're the one who raised me like this. Be a giver, not a taker. Help each other up, and don't hold each other down. You're the one who's always teaching me that stuff." And Biddy says, "And you know what? I'm proud to be the person I've become." Like I said, I'm getting emotional right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then Billy has a last thing where he's like, "No, I don't forget her. Not really. I just pretend to keep my anger, my reason to live from melting away." And after this point, Billy gets off the bus.
Yeah, and the tragedy of it is, if Billy hadn't raised his daughter to be such a good, caring, compassionate person who cares about justice,
yeah,
Biddy would still be alive.
I think that is the message here. I think that's why it hits so hard.
Yeah. He raised someone who's caring enough to want justice and wants a fair world. And that meant he lost his family. And Biddy would say that was the better outcome. That she'd rather be this compassionate person than, say, being someone more disinterested who lives a safer life. And I think the scene is Billy Squire coming to terms with that.
It is.
That Biddy chose to live her values, which are also his values that he taught her. And yes, it meant she died a very early death, but that is what she and ultimately him were considered to be the right thing to have done.
Yeah. And if there is one message I think that rings so true from these chapters, is that what you believe in and what you're advocating for is important. And, you know, there are going to be constant setbacks, but we know what our values are. We know what we're fighting for. We know what we care about. I'm not saying not to be upset, I'm not saying not to be angry, but don't let the anger fuel you into hatred.
Or at least the anger is there and it should be there. You should be angry, but you can't build a movement just on anger. You need some positive emotions. You need the hope. You need the belief in a fairer world. If you build the movement solely on anger, it's going to falter. And I don't think you can be a good leftist based solely on anger. Like, if you don't believe in a better future, what is the point of being a leftist and suffering all these defeats in the world? We endure through this and we keep going because we believe in a better world. Yes, so the anger is part of it, but I think the message this is showing is if you lose sight of the positive sides, your positive emotions, you will run off course.
And as I said, with this particular next 4 years, there's a lot of change, a lot of anger. There's definitely a lot of anger to come, a lot of decisions that are being made. But as we always do, we have to find a way to resist, advocate for the positions that we believe in. I mean, like I said, we are using these particular chapters to kind of to talk about some of our views on what's going on in the world right now.
And I know a lot of people are feeling pretty hopeless, and you're like, yeah, I don't have that positive emotion right now. And I totally understand that. And I'm not saying you should be feeling hope. What I will say, and this is from a John Green conversation.
Okay.
So after the election, he was asked on a stream, how could this happen? And he was saying, I don't have any answers. I just have hope. And it reminded me of this other John Green conversations. He quotes this poem by Emily Dickinson. It's a poem that starts, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And John Green points out that Emily Dickinson doesn't say you'll always hear Hope's song. Just that the tune never stops playing, that it never stops singing. You may not hear Hope right now, and that's fine. I have faith that one day you will be able to hear Hope again. And I hope just the faith that Hope will appear again will carry you through.
You gotta hope.
Yeah, you gotta hope. And maybe not right now in the aftermath, but eventually you have to circle back to hope.
Yeah, especially with like so many things up in the air. It's hard. We're gonna regroup. We're gonna keep fighting. But I think it's very important to just know that we can't give up.
We can't afford to give up. There's so many people in vulnerable populations who we can't give up on. Like, giving up is a privilege. And and also, I mean, and there's plenty of people in vulnerable populations that I'm not saying it's up to you, because there are plenty of people who literally can't afford to spend any energy on this because they have to survive in this world that we as a country have now created for them.
Yeah,
and
that's why it's for community, great community, make sure they're protected.
Yeah, it's up to us who have the privilege of doing something to actually protect them. If you can give up, it means you have a certain amount of security and power.
Yeah,
and you need to use that to help people who can't afford to give up.
Yeah, always have to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think everyone does. Which I think a lot of people that
everyone does. Yeah, it's just it hurts now, so everyone needs to, lick your wounds, get the help you need, get yourself back into a mental state, like work on your mental health, take care of yourself, and then if you can, come back and let's get back to work.
I know even for me and for what we're saying right now, it's hard to accept what we're saying because, a lot of things that I've done in the post result has been sad looking at stuff. And you know what? A lot of what what I was seeking out was stuff like this, was to have discussions like this and to hear these messages. Even me, who was like very cynical about everything, I couldn't sleep on that on Tuesday really at all. And Wednesday was very hard as well. It's important that we just stay on message, stay united, you know?
At the end of the hijacking, the parents of all the kids come to pick them up. Well, except for Anya and Damien, the son of the Desmonds.
The Scion boy.
Scion boy. Great ship for fan art. If you want really cute fan art, look at some Anya, Scion boy, Anya, Damien ship art. And then your Anya's mom comes, runs there. Like, literally, runs faster than a train to pick up
yours
Anya.
basically the Terminator. she can do anything. She is probably the most powerful character in this whole show.
She is. Like, she could have ended the whole hijacking by herself if she was there.
Oh yeah. If you've not watched the full second season, watch. Probably my favorite Yorv's moment is when they're on the cruise and she does that fight during the fireworks. Oh, that was so
amazing.
Yeah.
She kills a lot of people in that episode.
She does kill a lot of people. It's the absurdity of Spy Family, of where a lot of people die. A lot of people die all the time.
Like, yeah, Yor is a precious treasure that we need to protect. But also, she's probably close to 3 digits in her body count of how many people she killed.
Yeah.
And Yor knows Desmond's mom, because Yor goes to her fascist social gathering. Goes to the fascist social club. And, I'm kind of okay with it, because, it's hard out here in life. And you need to find socialization where you can. And if playing volleyball with your local fascists is the way to do it, I mean, who am I to tell you not to?
Well, I mean, in everyday life, you have to interact with people that are not of your political persuasion. It's just kind of how life works. And,
and it's not like they're talking or organizing around fascism. They're just, going to events, talking about being a mom. And one of Yor's fascist friends is Melinda Desmond, the wife of Donovan, and the mother of Damien. And there's a moment when she comes to pick up Damien. I don't want to spoil it, but I'll say it sent a shiver down my spine. It was such a great moment.
The way that it's inked, especially with like all the black, it's in the background, is really, really good. And just the contradictory nature of it. Like, it's just so contradictory.
I can't wait to see it animated.
Oh yeah, that's going to be really interesting when it's animated. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, that'll be really, really interesting. I mean, this is probably, from what we've read, our favorite arc as far.
And there's a lot of arcs we love in the show.
Yeah, Crew's arc is really good.
So with that, we'll bring to an end this episode.
Yeah.
Watch Spy Family, read Spy Family. It's both hilarious and moving. Spy Family can oscillate between just the funniest humor and then kind of rip your heart out.
Definitely. Like, the teaching your kids the morals and they follow through on it and forgetting that, that's exactly what you want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
That gets you.
Yeah.
That gets you.
And if you like this, like and subscribe. I think we got our first, subscriber who's not a friend of ours. Like, we got our first big boy subscriber.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we appreciate anyone who's willing to listen to us and our meandering thoughts.
Yeah.
And
shout out to the person in Finland.
We got 4 views in Finland, but I don't know. I don't know if they're coming back. Maybe the Estonia reference will bring them back.
Listen to this wherever you can. Maybe review it. If not, say it's bad.
Yeah.
Or if it's good, it's good.
We enjoy the dislikes as much as the likes, because it means somebody cared enough to click a button.
Yeah, there might be video content in the future. Just saying.
Yeah, and if you have any thoughts to send us, send it via manifesto to marxistclover@gmail.com. With that, I'm your host, Eric Hobbs Bond, and your co-host,
The English Next Door. Been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
おはようございます。あらあら。あれれ。あらあら。おい工藤。